Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the BG Independent Podcast. I'm your host, Dustin Galish. On this episode, we talked to Gordon Ricketts, who's an artist and in many ways is known for his mural work here in Bowling Green and in the Toledo area. I sat down with Gordon to kind of talk about his journey and what got him started making art in the first place and sort of why he's ended up here in Bowling Green. So sit back, relax, and enjoy episode 5 of the BG Independent Podcast. All right, Gordon, well, thank you for doing this. This is, I think this is podcast 5 now. And so it's been, the point of this is really to get different topics every time we sit down. I think this town's full of different unique stories and people that have been doing things for a long time. I think that's why I'm going more after people who are established here and can sort of elaborate on the history of things, give context to what's going on now. For you, it's been a lot of the art stuff. You know, I know your history at the university, and we'll talk how long you were there, but you were involved with the arts program, the Arts Village, correct?
Yep.
And so that was my knowledge of you previous, and sort of when you transitioned, I think you retired, and then sort of you become just sort of the mural guy, you know, in some ways, you know, that's sort of, other than just being, you know, a regular here in town that, you know, that I see often. Yeah. So my first question for you, you know, that's all I really know about you in many ways, is so what really started this idea of art for you? I mean, you're a painter. Obviously you're an artist first to get involved in all this stuff. So what was really the thing that triggered you to start?
Yeah, I don't think I ever set out to be an artist. And I don't know. I mean, I'm sure there are people that you know, you're a young person, you want to be a fireman, or you want to be a cowboy, or you want to be a nurse or whatever. And I never wanted to do any of those things. However, I did make art, and I like to draw. And I like to paint, and I did it as a young person, and I was successful. You know, it's like, you know, I was the kid that was next to you in class I could draw a really cool dragon. You know, I could draw really cool things. You know, and so the teacher always picked on me to you know, as an example. And so I had some really young influences, but my parents never encouraged me to be an artist, and I never thought of that as a career option. In fact, I didn't think about careers at all. I was more of a, I reacted to life as life came along. I remember I got drafted into the Marine Corps, and I said, oh, that'll be good for my posture. You know, it's like, it's during Vietnam, you know.
Yes,
I was apolitical. I didn't say, okay, well, I'm drafted, you know.
I could use a little discipline, maybe helping my posture. Yeah, learn how to make my bed a little better.
Yeah, so, here. You know, and then I've had some health issues. That's sort of a euphemism for the issues that I dealt with through my 20s and 30s, and that when most of my peers were getting ahead and becoming doctors and lawyers and journeyman carpenters and you know, their careers, their chosen path was you know, they were on their way, and I was going in reverse. Yeah. So I did some stuff in reverse. So I did a lot of weird, not weird, but different things, and just whatever happened. And if I lost a job, I'd find another job doing something. And I found myself at about in my early 40s, after a whole, you know, being married, having a couple kids, found myself divorced, found myself without a substantial, meaningful employment, without things. And so I went back to school, and I went back to school not to get a degree. I went back to school because I was looking for something interesting to do, and so I remember my first class was an art history class, and I took an art history class at a local community college, and then I took a drawing class, and then I took a painting class, and I took a Western, you know, the English, and I was just basically went back to school in my early 40s. And I met a group of people that I connected with really well. And one of the people I connected with, her name was Deborah Babylon, and Deborah Babylon she grew up in Findlay, Ohio, and she got her bachelor and master's degree, MFA, at BGSU, and she was my first painting teacher when I went back to school in my 40s. And we ended up being roommates in San Francisco when I went to get a bachelor's degree. But I just started doing art and just started. I ended up going to San Francisco Art Institute, and I was looking for graduate school, and Deborah and I were roommates at the time, and she got a postcard from BGSU, the art department, saying, we're looking for grad students. Can you recommend anyone? And she was alumni, so she recommended me, and she recommended I look here. And I applied to a bunch of other schools, and I got accepted at a couple other schools. But my brother was living in Detroit at the time, and I came down to visit, and Lou Kruger and Dennis Falkevich were the sort of the leaders of the art department at that time. And I met those guys, and I liked them, and I liked the facility. And coming to Bowling Green in the spring, it's wonderful. And I'm from San Diego, it's like, it was pretty nice. Everything's green, and, and it was great. Nobody told me about winter and about the heat of the summer, but spring was wonderful. And I ended up here going to graduate school, and as an artist. And I didn't want to be a teacher. In fact, I joined the Peace Corps, and I was going into the Peace Corps, and I already had an assignment, and they offered me a job at the Chapman Learning Community as their sort of resident artist, and I taught classes in the Chapman Learning Community. Then from there, I went to the Arts Village, and I think in the Arts Village, I really found a passion. I found that I was actually a pretty good teacher, and that I connected really well with people, and I got to explore the arts the way I like to explore it, and it involved people, and it involved students, and it involved the community, and so there was an evolution that happened there. To never set out to be a muralist, and go figure, I'm a muralist. I never set out to go be a teacher. Guess what? I retired as a teacher. Never set out to be an artist, and you're sitting in my studio now in downtown Bowling Green, where I make art.
How much of that do you think is that time period that you had before doing that? I think a lot of people, I'm similar, where I wasn't one of those people who grew up and just knew what I wanted to be. I didn't have that epiphany. I think the only thing that was closest to me was like playing baseball. I played professional not professional, but for a child was almost playing professional baseball. Traveled the country, and there was a certain point when I realized like I'm never going to be a pro. And it was like 16 where I was good, and then it's now taking me 20 years to really figure out.
You look at the guys next to you in the dugout, and some guys are really good.
Yeah, and I was, and I didn't have that crazy part of me that loved something so much that I was going to push through it,
Yeah.
So, but it's interesting to think about someone at your age. I went to school with no idea what I wanted to do. I was a criminal justice major. Now, looking back on that now is very funny. Not really my forte. I think I was just watching a lot of CSI at that time in the late '90s. It was, there's
okay.
And I was like, I kind of like this stuff, and I was in a mock jury thing, was a lawyer, and I did pretty well. So I was in that vein, but the first semester I realized most of this is just memorizing things, and that's not I'm pretty terrible at that, actually. So from there, it just sort of was, I had no idea what to do. And I think that's sort of a common issue with people. And at some point I found out my interests were video and, music and things like that. But it took 20 years to figure that out. As a kid, you don't really have that. But it's interesting for me where you're at to start at your age, because it gives you a different perspective on maybe how to approach things, in a different way. Do you feel like were you sort of an odd one out? Because traditionally most people in the art school, like they're in it and you stay in it, and there's a lot of, maybe you go out, but you weren't necessarily someone who was tenured and so had been in it from day one. You did kind of come from.
Yeah, I think as a young person, I was pretty. I was intimidated by college. I didn't. I was an underachiever in high school. I was interested in surfing, my girlfriend, and drinking beer. Sure. And not necessarily in that order. Yeah. But those were the three priorities of my life. School was not there. I graduated from high school. My parents said get a job or move out. Sure. And so if I didn't get it, if I moved out, I was going to have to get a job anyway. So I ended up getting a job at a local factory, and I was a factory worker for a couple of years, and then got drafted into the Marine Corps. And then I came out, and I had some jobs that I enjoyed.
Were you still making art through this? Drawing,
Well,
doing small stuff.
I would draw in my free time.
But were you interested in it? Like, would you go to galleries, or was there any part of you that was sort of? Because even you said before you were just taking classes, like art history.
I probably went to the bar.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah, I probably was more interested in drinking
Sure.
and surfing, and then I had a family and I had a couple kids when I got out of the Marine Corps, and those took precedent. Although I did attempt a few classes at college classes, and I did really well in that. I did really well in the art classes because I was really passionate about them. I really enjoyed them, and the other classes not so much. If I wasn't interested in it, I didn't do well in it, and so I never thought a degree was in my future. I think it took me a long time to grow up, is what it did, to find out that,
That's a good way of putting it. I think that's sort of, not to, compare myself, but there is something, I've always had a young heart in general, and that plays into sometimes maybe taking your time. It's like the tortoise and the hare approach. I've always felt like there's something about taking your time to really do what you want and to sort of, I don't know why that is that way. If I had it to do over again, I'd probably end up doing it the same way because that's who I am as a person. Correct. Yeah.
But I look at one of my good surfing buddies and who was my first friend in middle school, and Steve. Steve and I surfed together. We made surfboards together. He was a musician. He used to make banjos and guitars. He would do that, inlay the handles and all kinds of really cool stuff. But we surfed a lot, and I bailed him out of Tijuana jail one time. We got in trouble together. He ended up going and getting he's a dentist. He ended up being a dentist, and he retired when he was 42.
Sure.
Yeah. I'm just coming to life at 42. Sure. I've been doing any kind of, I drove a truck. I tended bar. I was a carpenter. I did a lot of things to try to make ends meet, but nothing was looking ahead to the future other than just to try to get a paycheck, and
Sure.
And of course he retired at 42. And I just called him last week or 2 weeks ago when the fire was in Maui. He retired to Maui.
Okay.
And so he was safe, and it was good to speak to him. We had talked for a few years. So
people's arcs really are different. I think the traditional idea of where you find happiness. A lot of times you hear it was usually just college, and then you go whatever that job is there, you stick to that until the end. That was sort of an arc for a lot of people. I think traditionally now people work dozens of jobs, over their careers.
Yeah,
not even in the same field.
Maybe college isn't. I'm glad I went to college, and I think it was really important, and important for me, and it opened up a lot of doors, But still I took advantage of some things that were, because I was in college, I was able to take advantage of some things that I didn't have those opportunities when I was not engaged in that thing. The guys that I hung around with, the people that I hung around with were in my 20s and 30s were not what I would call high achieving people. They weren't, we were the blue collar guys, we were the worker guys, and we complained a lot, and we didn't like our work,
Sure. There's a bit of an apathy in that too.
But and you went back to that original question. It's like, when I do things differently, I don't think knowing who I am, could I have said, okay, I'm like Steve, my friend who's the dentist. He knew in high school that he was going to be a dentist because his uncle was a dentist. His father and mother told him that he was going to be a dentist.
Sure, yeah.
His brother was in dental school. His brother was a year older, was in dental school. So when Steve graduated from high school, and his parents pushed him into college. My parents didn't push me into college. They said, and so I ended up doing whatever. I did go to college, but I didn't do well at it. I did well in art classes.
Sure, yeah.
But I was asked to leave after a year and a half because I had a 1.2 GPA. And so they said, well, maybe you need to not go to college anymore. So you need to do something else. And I said, well, look I'm working 12 hours. I'm working 70 hours a week is what I was doing. And I just gotten married. I was working 70 hours a week, and I was trying to go to school. and you know, and something had to go, and so it was the college thing. So.
Yeah, I mean, that arc of what you do for your work, you can trace it back to lots of your parents. There's a lineage there. I mean, doctors, lawyers, I mean, even the specifics of being a dentist, you know, there's a lot of overlap there between, you know, and I think if you come from a family that doesn't necessarily have that, mine was working in, you know, the steel factories. I mean, that was pretty much, that was what you did. If you go pretty back, it was, you know, whatever version of that existed. You know,
being a baseball player made total sense.
Yeah, and so I mean, that's what that was. So, and my family was like, yeah, you should do that, because they didn't really have any other idea what you're supposed to do. And even college was always it was connected to baseball. Like that, they were sort of they were coexisting linearly, which is this weird kind of thing because they're very separate. As an education and hitting a baseball really have nothing to do with each other. But because they're tied into education, sports has always been this sort of, you know, in college now it's complicated how it all works, you know, but it's a weird way to get in. And I learned at a certain point too that I wasn't going to be able to maintain, like you were saying, be an athlete and a student and just be social and have a life as well. I think I had perspective to go, I don't think I'm going to be able to pull this off.
And I suppose there's an evolution now. You make choices, you make decisions, and you know, and you know, you're good at something and you like something, and something makes money, and all three of those have to work together, you know, and that didn't work. So survival for me was I needed to make some money to be able to buy groceries and to be able to you know, to pay my mortgage and pay the things that I need to pay. And that certainly took precedent over college, over art, over you know, anything that I did. So when my life changed, you know, when I ended up getting divorced and I ended up going through this really major life's transition thing, and it's like we can call it, you know, midlife crisis in males, and I was in my late 30s when I dealt with, you know, here I am, and I'm almost 40 years old, and you know, and I'm struggling.
Sure. Like who am I, or like you are starting
emotionally
over,
and my identity. Who am I? You know, and you know, I'm barely got two nickels to rub together, and actually from that time, from my middle 30s till I had my job at BGSU as a teacher, I was a part-time worker any way I could make money, and doing student loans to get me through school. You know, that's how I lived. You know, it was not an easy existence.
Is some of that because you were living in California? Is that anything that in perspective cost?
Well, I don't know. You know,
I always think about that.
Yeah,
like
I mean, the cost of living, but you know, San Diego has the Pacific Ocean. There's a lot to be said for the Pacific Ocean. You know, and well,
you mentioned before, it's like that. I always wonder, like, have you noticed a difference in almost when you live in a place that you're surrounded by physical activity stuff, the ocean, the beach, like, is there less focus on being an artist or these more out there things because you're surrounded by this other majestic thing, and you can pull inspiration from it. But in the Midwest, there's not a lot here to be inspired by. In some ways,
there's a lot of good music that came from California.
Sure, no,
there's
for
a lot of good visual arts and you know.
No, of course, no. That's why the question almost like counters it.
People are inspired by that.
But I think about if there's more distractions of the culture and more activity, like, is there a balance there? You know, I think probably in the end actually evens out because there's more to be inspired by, but more distractions as well to keep you from your discipline. Yeah,
as a young person, I don't know if I even thought about that. I thought about that deeply. You know, it's like now when I go back to California, you know, you don't miss. As Tom Waits wrote a great song. I don't know if you're familiar with Tom Waits. Yeah, we went to high school together. So and Tom writes this great song about you don't know where you where you come from until you're gone, you know. It's like you don't appreciate things until you've left it, you know. And so true, you know, so now I leave California, and when I go back, I cherish every moment I have on the beach, walking in the sand, going in the water. I'm doing drawings today and paintings today that they aren't. I don't make representational work, but I've used some imagery from the past. A horizon line. You know, the horizon line. When you're a surfer, you're looking out at that's horizon line all the time. Somehow that evolved, and that's in my work. So almost all my personal paintings have a horizon line.
Yeah.
You know, they just do. And so where'd that come from? Also, I noticed the horizon line when I lived out out past west and out in the country, when, you know, the cornfield. I wasn't in the town here where you can't see the horizon because of all the trees, but out there I would, you know, the sunsets and the sky and the horizon became really, really important, and those ended up in my art, and not intentionally, but because I just go with what I'm feeling at the time. So
yeah. As a teacher here, did you ever feel like there were certain themes that you come across, you know, being this Midwestern school, or like certain, it's like music, you know, sometimes you have a regional feel, or, you know, with BG, you're certainly the Toledo scene, Detroit, Columbus, we're kind of in this middle spot of being influenced by a lot of that art. Did you ever feel like you came across some type of theme from just being in Ohio?
I felt that I was different.
Yeah.
You know, I felt that I was different, which I think is a good thing. And there is there's a if you take a look at the art here and you take a look at art from out west, I don't know. I think that
there's like decaying industrial stuff. I know it's a big thing in Detroit. A lot of it.
Yeah.
There's something about that aspect of decay and sort of rebirth. I know I'm sort of seeing that in photography and, you know, people who seek that out. But I always wonder.
Well, those are interesting things, and to you know, photograph and to represent and stuff. I mean, I really like was the Heidelberg project and going up there, we used all these old junk houses and stuff that were going to be demoed, and found all this junk, and it got free paint, and Tyree, and he just painted all this stuff and did all that. You know, those were
using the old wood and just different things to paint
on. The old houses, yeah, he painted on the old houses.
That's awesome,
you know, and but had things that were going to be thrown away, and, you know, scrounge stuff up and nail them to a side of a house, and they were pretty fun, painted on the street.
Like repurposing art is a new thing that I think is a wonderful aspect, or whatever you call it. Not repurposing, but just sort of taking things that are thrown away and finding new ways to sort of use them.
I think it seems to me that there's a full range of artists, and in just taking your region in Toledo and Detroit, and you said Columbus and Bowling Green and Findlay, whatever, you know, and you can go. There are hobbyists. There are, you know, and that make representational stuff. You know, it's really easy to access.
Sure.
Your music is hard to access. Not everybody can access what you do.
Yeah.
So you're the, you know, and I appreciate that about your music, because you're not making what everybody likes. You're making what you do.
Correct. It's really just what we want to make, and then just
right.
Sort of
you
leave
make
it at
what
that.
you're going to make. So that's my art too. So I'm not looking to build an audience. I'm not looking for commercial success. I like it when it comes,
sure.
You know, and I like to make. I like, you know, I've got paintings for sale, but that's not what makes me make art.
Yeah.
So, you know, some people say there's a God gene. I think for me there's an art gene, you know, and it's like it makes me want to do this stuff.
Yeah.
I feel better when I'm creating, when I'm making things.
You know, sort of the idea that I come to as an artist, and especially as a musician, is this is something that's, it's you can say it's almost like the God thing, but this idea where there is something subconsciously as an artist where you're making it, you're not really thinking about it, you're just sort of in it, and that's something that I found. It's like that's when the best stuff comes too, I think. And as we're talking before, anything that would be catering to an idea or what sells, that you can't be making art in that space if you already have set that intention. You know, it's sort of like me making a new song. It's really hard to sit down and go, I'm going to make a funky song now with some uplifting lyrics. Like that's never happened. You know what I mean? It's like it sort of just has to come. You know, you go through dry spells where nothing's coming you might think there's nothing there, and then it does happen. And I think a lot of it is making sure you're ready for it. You're disciplined to harness it in and make something out of it, which is tough. You know, and I think that's sort of. Do you feel like that's still something as an artist in what you do that, you know, and being older now and through different generations of like, you know, making art, do you feel like that's still part of what keeps you going, like you say, like just that inspiration just to make it?
You know, there's a personal practice where I'm allowed to do anything I want to, and you can walk. I remember we were doing art walk, and we were up on the third floor of the Finders building, right? Greg Hallamay's a building, and there were maybe 6 artists up there, and we were going to participate in the art walk. So we cleaned up the place, and we all hung our work out in this common area that we had. And I remember this woman walking up the stairs, and she got up there, and she wanted to know where the real art was. And it's like she was looking at what I do and what Chris does. He was up there then, and we weren't painting landscapes. We weren't painting portraits. We weren't doing puppy paintings. We weren't, it wasn't accessible to her. She was really disappointed because she didn't understand what we were doing and didn't want to really take the time to understand what we were doing. So how we value that or whatever, how people end up appreciating what we do. I mean,
it's kind of out of your hands, really, and that's how I see it at this point.
Well, it can be.
I mean, there's certain levels of you control, but it really is, once you put it out, anything you're doing, it's sort of out of your control to what people think of it and what it means to them. You can't convince somebody that what you're doing.
Dustin, you've heard a lot of music. You can play a lot of. We talked about blues earlier. You have the skills and the craft to be able to do that stuff, but it's not who you are as an artist. And I went through formal education, and I sat in figure drawing classes, and I taught it for a long time too, where I had to draw, representational things, and people could access those easier, and that would have made me really popular. And if art was selling today, that would have been maybe I would sell more.
But even that aspect of it, though it's possible, isn't, again, that's because I like your point there, where I could make blues music, and because it's possible, but it wouldn't feel genuine enough to.
It wouldn't be genuine. It wouldn't be who I am. So,
and I would feel I would feel self-conscious about that myself too. That they figure me out.
It wouldn't work for me. Yeah, it wouldn't work for me. So I have we have this community, and I have Chris, who I share a studio with, and my friend Bill Thompson. Bill and I have MFAs from BGSU, and Chris, he got his at University of Iowa, I believe. And so I've got people who like my work, so that's good, and they give me feedback, and we have an enjoyable time like that. But I would love to be able to paint one of these on the side of a wall, but it's not going to be appreciated. Carrie's beautiful painting on the side of Howard's with her design. It's the best mural in town, I think, and I've designed a couple of them, but I really appreciate that. But she got a lot of pushback. Yeah. A lot of people didn't like it, I was going
to segue into the mural, so I'm glad you brought that up, because I think it is a very abstract, like my joke now when I talk to, former college friends that, I still keep in touch with, and we sort of joke about, Bowling Green. I'm like, hey guys, we got murals now. And they're like, whoa. It's like, oh man, you guys are catching. It's like this sort of, there was a stigma for a long time here that really, if it wasn't, a windmill or a picture of the Clazel, it's still here. Or there was, these weird things that sort of exist still. Like, why are we painting pictures of things that are here? It was really weird. It just didn't make sense to me. Like, here's a cornfield. It's not, these things look nice, but you're not really, that's not art to me. It's like a photo that you're painting on something. And it was really, that's all we had for a long time, really.
Right.
So what was the first mural that started it all? I'm trying to remember, like, just the downtown, or what was like the...
Well, what started it for me was, it's a great story, and I won't tell the whole thing because I could embellish it and grow it, but I had a relationship with Sophia Quintero Arts and Cultural Center on South Avenue in Toledo, and Broadway and South Avenue, and Charlie Canwisher and Ricardo Canones, who used to teach at BGSU, were looking for a visiting artist, and they wanted to bring in an ethnic artist. So I had this thing going on with Sophia Quintero. I'm from San Diego. I knew this muralist in San Diego who's been muraling since 1974, Mario Torero, and so we just got together, and Charlie and Ricardo and I were able to put it together, and we brought this muralist out here because we're going to paint in a neighborhood that's an ethnic neighborhood, and I'm not going to go in there as this, Anglo guy and tell them what kind of art they should have, right?
Yeah.
So so we got started with that, and we met the local chamber of commerce, the Latino chamber of commerce. We met the priest of the St. Peter and Paul Church. We actually went to a Catholic mass in Spanish to meet the people. We met all the the restaurateurs, and it was really a great experience. And we made these really wonderful murals. And like the first thing that had ever been done in Toledo, that was a big deal. And the police stopped and wanted to know what we were doing. The fire department came out. It was right underneath the train where the trains came by going to Chicago. The the engineers of the train came up to see what we were up to. I mean, it was a big deal. So it became a class that I taught, this mural class, community art class, and it became about involving ourselves in the community, getting to know the community, trying to paint what was representative of the community. And I always tried to hire some artistic person that was local, local from their neighborhood. So I got involved with it that way, and not all murals turn out great, but a lot of them did. And I got approached by, well, I did when Arlen's was getting ready. They wanted something.
Okay, so that was kind of the start. All right, I think that
Arlen's
thinking about just where it was sort of a new start of this. So, and I love that piece. That's a really cool piece.
And so they wanted something. And they had this big wall. I had this class coming up, and so they wanted so I designed the mural, and then it was a big project. It would take me a long time, but I had like 15 students, and we painted it, in a few days. It was really great. So that started it, and then the New Loves owned this property, and I painted these donkeys for them, and
I've always liked that one. That was a mystery to me. Part of me always thought that it was like an extension of Kebab It or something, like just culturally. Like I always tried to make sense of it. I love the dot aspect of it too, and just sort of. I never really understood that one.
But the roosters, and that whole background motif were based upon this Mexican cultural icons, and so. The blue donkeys just happened to be at the time when of the election, the 2020, just 2019, so the 2020 election, and it was a COVID summer, so we painted it with masks on. I had some volunteer students. We all painted it with masks, and then I painted the blue donkeys to represent the political. Sort of leanings of the people that commissioned it, and then the dots in the background were taken from their Aboriginal and
so I love a lot of the Australian Aboriginal dots.
So I love those Aboriginal that Australian Aboriginal stuff. So I try to juxtapose those,
No, I like that piece. I'm good to have perspective on that now. I was like, I didn't know that you had worked on that one. And during COVID, it was one of those ones where it disappeared.
It just popped up.
Yeah, everyone's just. I was just like, wait, what happened? Where did that come from?
It turned out really wonderfully, and I like that. And then and Carrie was the first student in the first class I ever taught at BGSU.
Really?
As a that I got paid for. I did some grad student stuff, and she was a freshman, and I got to know her then, and she was really talented then, and she left school, and then she came back, and she was married and had some kids, and then she ended up finishing her degree, but we had kids that were playing soccer together in high school, and so I saw her at a soccer game, and she says, well, I really like painting murals, and I said, but I've never painted one. And I said, well, let's do one together, and so we did. And so, and I said,
what was the first one? Was it the Howard's?
The Howard's one.
It was.
And she said, well, what shall I paint? And what should we paint? And I said, well, look I love your art. Yeah. Let's paint one. Let's paint those. She calls them critters.
Sure.
Let's paint some of those critters on the side of Howard's, and we'll make it cool. And it turned out really great. She's got a really interesting aesthetic. She's got a story behind those critters that you can talk to her about. That's really personal for her. So.
You know what? I always thought it could be interesting to put like a QR code or something on that mural to like with the character information or something to add to it. It could be like a draw to it or something, you know?
Yeah.
Because there isn't really anything there to explain it, and that could help in some people's. Because I think any complaints is more just I have no idea what that is. You know, I loved it because it felt like Howard's is full of characters. Yeah. If you look at the inside, they've got a lot of this sort of abstract characters in there too. I love that. I love the mural inside of Howard.
I normally have to have some sort of anchor, whether it's a subject or not. Mm-hmm. And when I'm murals, I do something that's representational. Normally, it'd be fun to do something that was non-representational, like some abstract stuff. Sure. And we've tried to convince people to let us do that.
I would love just patterns and colors and things. Just add a whole lot to a space. You know. Yeah.
But she has a really interesting aesthetic, and so the way we laid it out, and you notice there's no central figure on there. She's got this big wall, and it's sort of this. It seems randomly placed, and they're not. She's thinking about where each one of those go, and she's thinking about each image, and it's a well considered piece. However, it doesn't look like it, and I like that. Yeah. I like that, and I've always been impressed with Carrie's work. The same thing that goes with her easel painting practice too. It's the same, and her ceramics are
love the ceramic stuff too. So, yeah, they're on the same kind of space.
We're happy that we've been allowed to do some work in town. We did a representational piece from photographs that showed that we could do it in a sense, but it's not necessarily our art. We did that in that little alleyway between
the piece between
Junipers and
the barrel room Beckett's spot.
And Beckett's and
I really like the eye doctor spot. I think was that with James Baldwin.
And that was we got to do that one ourselves. So
really like that. Yeah, I think that's a beautiful piece.
That was one that we didn't have. They wanted to okay it. You know, it's like, well, what do you think we're going to do? You know, we're going to paint a bunch of profanity and pornographic stuff on the wall. Yeah. No, however, that might be fun.
There's a place for that somewhere.
There's a place for that. There's a place for that.
There's an alley somewhere.
But some alley somewhere. But we did that, and we did the ones on the back for Amy Kraft in the back for Keeps. That's really a beautiful piece.
I like that a lot.
And it's sort of an abstracted piece, and I like that. So we want to do more.
The Will Santino piece, I think, is wonderful as well. I mean, that's another one.
Which one's that?
The Will Santino piece behind Grounds.
And Will Santino designed that.
And so like that's a part of what you guys have done too. I think that's interesting that you can have another artist who maybe not in the area.
And he wasn't here.
He's not here,
but he grew up here.
Yeah, and so it makes total sense.
And Laura and Kelly wanted to, and they knew I painted murals, and I'd done stuff for them before.
Yeah. Even that idea, like I never thought of that. The projection idea that they can give you the source material and work with the artist. I think that's something. Thinking about it now, it's like, oh, that's pretty obvious that you could do that. But I'm like, oh, it wasn't. I like that idea.
I think a lot of public art is can be collaborative, and that piece worked out well. Mm-hmm. I tried to stay as close to what Will was looking for as I could.
Because all those colors were definitely, I imagine, were mixed.
He picked the colors,
and
I tried to match them the best I could. So that was a fun deal, and it wasn't physically demanding like Howard's was physically demanding. You're up there painting that big giant wall,
crane and all that.
Yeah,
stuff.
And all that.
Well, I like the Howard's or the Grounds one too because you're embracing the structures, like the fence, the garage door. I mean, that's another way I think of like small things that can change a city so quickly. You know what I mean? I think even just giving people excuses to come to town just to look at stuff. I think that's something different than just
the idea of public art. It should represent the community, and the community is just not the first. The first mural was the Adrian Teo design mural in the parking lot across the street from Grouse, from the flower shop, and I refreshed that for Adrian, and I apologized to Adrian because I wasn't able to keep it as pure as he had done it. I couldn't copy it exactly.
I like that piece now because in the context of where everything else is.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. I think that's why it works.
Well, some diversity works fine.
And that is a part of our culture, our town. It works.
And you have the piece that was done on the back of Kevin did the one on the back of Ben Franklin's with the windmill and the clock tower and all that. So you have those traditional pieces, but but you also have some other pieces that represent the artists in the area.
Yeah.
And I think they represent the area. If you looked at them, they represent who we are.
And they were good. But you could tell that there was an intention maybe to not do anything that might stir anything up at all. I mean, that's what it felt like to an extent.
Well,
not to say anyone's going to say, hey, don't do this, but it felt safe. And as again, I'm not necessarily an artist who seeks only safe.
Artists like to express who we are, but public artists who like to express who we are. But in our climate, in our neighborhood, to be respectful of others is certainly an important part of it. So I'm not gonna you're not gonna get on stage out on the Black Swamp Arts Festival and swear a bunch of obscenities and and do that to the audience with their kids and stuff. So
like the mayor's he's a real POS, isn't he?
Yeah.
Just like, what is he talking? Is this necessary, Dustin? I don't think.
No. So, but the idea that it represents the community and the diversity of the community. This is not a homogenized community. Sometimes you get the feel it is, but there's a lot of.
I think that was my critique, if anything, is those murals, while done well and worked, it felt homogenized. That's not necessarily some of the towns around BG that would have covered it. In some ways, because it covered those things that were foundational for why this town has been what it is, but it didn't feel like it was. Wasn't any of that underbelly.
Somebody was going to go through and edit the stuff, and then and that was going to be it. So we haven't been edited out, and I think that people may not understand Carrie's, but it's really a beautiful piece. Just look at the colors. That's like you may not understand the imagery, but look at the colors, and it brings some interest. I was hoping that we'd do more this summer, and we haven't been able to, and both Carrie and I feel the same way that artists should be compensated for what they do. We don't get, it's not like I'm doing my easel painting. that's what I do. If I'm doing something for the community and painting a community piece, then there should be some sort of compensation for it. And
I guess that's a good question. I'll follow with that.
How do you live as an artist?
Yeah, how are these things funded? I guess that is a very good question, because I mean, a lot of this stuff, there's a lot of resources. I even think about that mural on 75 by the river. I try to wrap my head around what could that have cost, resources and
$1 million.
Right? Yeah. So it's like,
that was $1 million.
So that stuff doesn't magically
They raised
$750,000.
Okay. To start it off, but they ran out of money.
Okay. And so they had to slowly.
But they paid an artist, and they paid people to paint it, and it was a large, it was a big deal.
It's a beautiful piece.
The guy that projected the images of the figures on the last three that went up. Yeah. He was an expert in the world.
Had to be on projection mapping and doing that stuff.
Projecting on a radius surface,
not a flat surface at all.
Not a flat surface. So where's the focus going to go, and how do you do that?
It's pretty amazing.
So there were people that were compensated for it, and and it was not without controversy too. There are people that probably still don't like it, which is too bad, but that's the way it goes.
It's a short term. In the long term, it was the right answer. I think that's the thing. Stuff here too.
But that had private funding, and the city put in money, corporations put in money. There were some people that the three women who conceived of the idea and put it together were fairly well connected in the community.
Okay.
Sure. So they talked to relatives and to friends and whatever, and they were able to put together a lot of it. We here, we've been working on city grants. We got a couple grants, and that's where we were funded, along with some private donate. Floyd Kraft gave us some money. Amy donated. Amy pretty much paid for that one back herself. Arlen's paid for that. The New Loves paid for the donkeys. But the Howard's mural was started with the city grant, with a community grant, and then
a little bit of fundraising with the
Carrie did a bunch of fundraising, so we were able to raise a lot of money for that. So I think a combination of fundraising and city grant money. We've got a couple that people are interested in doing them. I think sticker shock scares them, because we ask we asked for some money,
Sure.
you know.
Yeah.
You know.
But that's at this point that's understood because there's a certain quality and there's you could easily make a terrible mural and it looks terrible and then it's sort of
I think I'm pretty happy with what we've accomplished and they're different and
I like different styles. It shows the diversity of what you can do. That it's not a one-dimensional space to be a muralist. One of my good friends, Matt Taylor. I don't know if you know Matt Taylor at all.
Yeah.
But he was muraling for quite a while. Yeah. I think a friend of his, Sarah Thomas, who also did.
Matt had a great mural on the one that I know the best. That I know the best is on the Black Kite, the back wall of the Black Kite coffee shop up at.
He'd done a lot of schools. I think he was doing a lot of schools, gymnasiums, doing really cool stuff. Right. And I remember that was awesome to see because I'm sure he was getting paid because he's there's some budget for some of this stuff. But it was great. It was great to see like his work, and he was doing his own work too. It wasn't just.
No, and Sarah was painting with him on that too.
Yeah, it was just Matt Taylor art. It was very cool to see. So to me, that started a lot of it in Toledo. See, that's the thing. It was happening in Toledo over the last 15 years. But seeing it here now, it's refreshing to see the least. And I'm thankful that you've been able to get a lot of it going. Do you feel like some of the success is because you've been here long enough? People trust you. Same in a sense of like, it's not like you're everybody's best friend in town. Like, there's just There's Gordon, but there's a level of that being established at the university.
There is a level of that. I've been around for a while, and Carrie's been around for a while, and we've established ourselves in the area. And I, but I think there are some people that don't necessarily appreciate what we're doing too. So, but that's
the nature of art, correct?
That's part of the gig, I was always said if everybody liked what you did, you're doing it wrong.
Correct.
That's
very true.
Then you're doing Disney stuff.
Yeah.
And that's not what I want to be. I don't want to have you and me and all these other artists make all this work and then have somebody come through and cherry pick the good stuff and then make a movie out of it and it becomes a formula for them and then that's not what our artists are creating and changing and taking risks and doing a lot of different things.
Well, last question as we'll wrap up is really like what is the significance of the murals? You mentioned, representation of the city. I think that, I just traveled to Columbia in March and holy shit, there's so much art there. It's just, the city is just so much color. There's just so much, it's just everywhere. It's almost overwhelming. And you look at a place like here where that's not here as much for sure. No. But it does give you an insight into their world just by walking the streets. And I feel like, is that what we're trying to do here in some ways? Is like if someone comes to BG, I've never been here, and you can walk downtown, you're going to take, even if you're here for a half hour, you get something to eat, I don't know, you're going to buy something, and you're going to take in a lot. Just
you're going to buy a cup of coffee, maybe. You're going to get a sandwich.
Yeah.
I don't know, a slice of pizza. It gives us some interest. It gives the people a reason to come to Bowling Green. Another reason to come to Bowling Green is let's take a look at the murals, and we need to have more. I say all the walls in the alleys should all be covered.
Just covered,
should be covered with murals, and it shouldn't be. I would love to be the artist to do all of them. But I think that having a diversity of
that's a lot of work. No, that can keep you busy. That's good. No, but there's. Do you feel like that's going to help now build more culture for people to come down to see the potential of that and get more people involved?
Well, it defines the community for one thing. It helps define a community, and if we're going to embrace this public art as something good and that we want to help define who we are as a culture, as a community, then we should do it, and then. And it would bring people here.
Yeah.
There would be fallout from that initial investment of painting murals to having people come in and defining who we are as a community, and then having people come in and checking that stuff out. Mm-hmm. People make trips up to Ann Arbor because there's an alley back there that people just do murals. Mm-hmm. I used to go to New York City. There was a whole building, like a multi-story building that was painted with, the whole building was murals. It was marvelous. And you went to Columbia.
Mm-hmm. It really was that.
I go to South America to Peru, the same thing in the town that I go to. What makes the town is got this traditional facade, but the alleyways and all these places, there's great murals that define who they are as a culture. Some of them are religious, some of them are political, some of them are are just beautiful on their own, you know, like a landscape or an architect or architecture, whatever.
Do you think some of the sort of or being against mural is because of the graffiti? Do you think there's still a bit of that where people get confused by it, or there's some correlation there between the two, just to be reluctant against it in some ways?
Well, I think graffiti got a really bad name, and I think a graffiti artist might be beside there, because graffiti, in a sense, is just art that's been made without permission on a surface that's been done without. So if you're a graffiti artist, you need to be ready to go to jail, kind of a thing.
Yeah, if somebody's paying you with your spray paint, you're not a graffiti artist. You're just an artist now.
Yeah, you're just an artist. Somebody's paying you, you're just an artist. So, although a lot of people really like that style. I mean, you get stopped at the train track and watch those cars come by.
Some beautiful stuff, man.
Beautiful
Holy cow.
things on there, you know, and those have been done in the dark, and you know, watching out for the authorities to come by and bust you.
Did it ever happen? You guys were doing projections at night, and people were like, "What are you guys doing?" Yeah,
the police came. Yeah, in Toledo, that one they did.
You're
they
right.
Stopped us.
That makes
and
sense.
I had to have permits.
Okay,
the first ones we did in Toledo, we had to have permitted, and I showed that they wanted to see my permit.
No, I get that,
because they thought we were graffiti.
Just showing up middle night to kind of pull something off, and not really asking anybody.
And we were just so I you know, people, I guess. We've never been bugged by anybody here when we were doing our projecting and doing those drawings. I think more people were interested in it, but the people never thought that we were doing anything. But graffiti artists are going to hide out.
Sure.
They're not going to sit there with a projector and there's 10 or 20 people hanging around.
They don't work that way.
They're going to be spraying on the back of a building or
black clothes and a hoodie, and you're moving quick, things like that. But
and they're really fast.
You don't really see much of that in town, really. I mean, there's a couple kids who do it every once in a while. It's not really. Yeah, it's sort of.
And I think that the murals stopped that. The murals, the people the graffiti artists are pretty respectful of the muralists.
Has there been any issues at this point where anything has been sort of sprayed on or ruined? That's great to hear. That means that's good, because that shows you that people do respect. Yeah. If anything, that's going to preserve some other places from that stuff too. At the same point,
I guess those graffiti artists are considered vandals in a lot of circles. And I remember there was some graffiti done on the side of one of the buildings, and I was. And I got a call in my office, and they wanted to know who did it. And I said, well, why would I know? And this is when I was a teacher. I said, well, you're in contact with all these young kids. You hang out downtown.
Was it a nice piece? Maybe they would ask you, but no.
You drink coffee at Grounds for Thought, it's like, So, you must know who did it. And I said, no, I don't know who did it. And so, so it's not what I do. So.
Yeah. All right, Gordon, I think we're going to wrap it up here. That was a really nice conversation, man.
Cool. It was fun.
I appreciate it. A lot of people have a little more perspective on what's been going on. I know a little bit just through working with you and doing a few stories about it, but I think people have a better understanding of the murals, and so
it's all good stuff. It's all good stuff. It's fun to see. It makes things interesting,
Yeah, I mean, it's just another reason that Bowling Green, is trying to make itself a little more unique, and a lot of that I think comes down to generational things too. We've got people who are in charge. That there's just different generations perceive art. They're a little more open to things over time, and it's just sort of. We have a bunch of breweries now, and there's more festivals happening downtown. People seem more open to shut the downtown.
We need a car show again, by the way. The summer car.
They moved it out to the museum. Actually, we were there. I talked to them about it because I was like, "Where did it happen?" And they're just like, "It was a lot of work," and but it was really cool. I know. I think they just have to find someone who can figure it out.
I lived on Main Street for 10 years up above Leahy's Appliance Store. I remember walking down and rubbing my eyes to go next door to get a cup of coffee at Grounds, and there'd all these cool cars out there. I walk down and see the parade or whatever. It was really great. So.
That's really you're right. I kind of forgot. Yeah, the car show was a big one for a while, but the university's got a nice one now with with the rally on Main and the Firefly and stuff too.
Those are good. Those are good.
And even those help a ton with the murals and the art and people exposure, and just it's positive for the city that people are okay with shutting things down and just kind of embracing.
I think Carrie and I are ready to paint a couple a year. We'd still like to we'd like to do some more. So I mean, it's like if you're listening to this podcast, contact Carrie or me, and
please do. Yeah, no, if you have a space or something that you think
paint you a mural.
If you own part of a building somewhere, anywhere, it does help. It doesn't have to be traditional spots.
But we want to get paid too.
There is that. So, All right, Gordon, thank you so much, and we'll be back.
You bet.